Hi, this is Jessica with Dining Traveler, and welcome to part 3 of the Dining Traveler cooking series, where we try recipes from our favorite destinations. For this edition, we're going to Puerto Rico. The whole series is dedicated to Puerto Rican holiday recipes that have been in my family for years. And we're shooting on location at La Cosecha, which is a contemporary Latin American market located in the Union Market District of Washington, D.C. For this episode, we are making pasteles. Pasteles are like a tamal, and the masa can be made of different ingredients, but many of you guys asked me to make pasteles de yuca. Yuca, cassava, is a delicious root vegetable that is very prevalent in our Puerto Rican cuisine. And for this pastel, we're gonna fill it with stewed pork meat. So let's get started. The first step in making pasteles de yuca is preparing the meat filling. And we have pork shoulder seasoned with sofrito, tomato sauce, adobo, sazon, bay leaf, annatto seed oil, achote oil, aceitunas, which are Spanish-styled olives. To start the meat, what we're gonna do is we're gonna place it in a saucepan, in a heavy saucepan, a caldero, Dutch oven, fill it with water, add a little salt and pepper, and we're gonna bring it to a boil and let it cook for 45 minutes. That softens the meat, which makes it much easier to cut into small pieces. For those who are not familiar with pasteles, it can be a very time-consuming process. Usually it's made in a big group, the family is all together, the mom, the tias, the abuela, everybody has a designated role. Things are a bit different these holidays. Maybe you're not able to go home, so it's good to plan ahead, perhaps make the meat the night before, then make the masa, but it's a good activity to get the whole family involved. While the meat cooks, we're gonna get our masa started, and I start with 4 pounds of pre-cut, pre-peeled yuca that you can buy at the refrigerator section at the supermarket. Also, you can use fresh yuca, sazon, adobo, annatto seed oil, evaporated milk, and for special equipment, I use a food processor. If you're really motivated, you can also use a grater, and cheesecloth, which will tell you later what we're using it for. Now we're gonna put the yuca in the food processor. I just do a few pieces at a time so it blends properly. Now that the yuca is blended, we are gonna strain it in a cheesecloth. If you don't have a cheesecloth, you can also use a clean kitchen towel. So we're doing little batches at a time so it's not completely overwhelming, and to make sure that you get all that liquid out. Yuca is very starchy, and if you don't get this liquid out, what's gonna happen is it's gonna make the masa too wet and it just doesn't taste right. The 45 minutes are up. Now we're gonna get the meat out of the burner, and we're gonna put it on a cutting board and let it sit for a few minutes before we start cutting it into small pieces. Make sure you do reserve the water that it cooked in, because it makes a nice broth for the guiso. So we're gonna get the guiso started. We're gonna start with a little bit of olive oil, not too much, around 2 tablespoons, because we're gonna add also the annatto seed oil, sofrito, salsa de tomate, tomato sauce, and optional, some olives. I know that some people love them, some people hate them, so just use them at your discretion. We're also adding the adobo, sazon, a few bay leaves, a little bit of pepper. Once all the base ingredients for the stew for the guiso are mixed, let's add that reserved broth to the caldero and give it a good stir. A little pro tip I learned from my mom: with pernil, the top can be a little bit fatty, so make sure you cut half of it out. I leave a little bit on because that fat does give it that good flavor. So we're gonna cut it into small cubes. They don't have to be perfect, like around 1 inch. They're also going to get smaller as we cook them. Now we're gonna cover el caldero. I would check it every 10 minutes or so and give it a nice stir. Now we're gonna check on the guiso, the stew, and it's been around 2 hours. We wanna make sure that the meat is nice and soft. Smells delicious. Let's give it like 5 more minutes. We're gonna start assembling the pasteles, and this is the point where you need to get your whole family involved because it is a lot of work. We have banana leaf, we have food wrapping paper. If you can find it, you can also use parchment paper, kitchen twine, our guiso, and the ingredients to make the masa. To prepare the masa, we start with the evaporated milk, then the annatto seed oil, sazon, adobo. Mix it first with a spatula, but don't be afraid to get in there with your hands and really mix it. Make sure all those flavors and seasonings are coming together evenly. Get ready to assemble el pastel. We have the paper, the banana leaf. We're gonna add a little bit of achiote oil, not too much, but enough so the masa doesn't get stuck. Now let's add masa. It ends up being like around a half cup for each serving. We wanna make sure that it's not too thin, but not too thick. Then you're gonna add the filling. Don't go too cheap on the filling. We call it pastel ciego if people don't put enough filling in there. Then we're gonna fold them. And then make sure with your hand that is sealed here. Fold it into a little crease and then bring it to the top. Then at the end, you're gonna fold it. Here, I like to tap it a few times, make sure that the masa and the meat sets. And fold it again. And then you're gonna bring your other pastel, put it on top, and tie it together with kitchen twine. Now make sure it's tight, but not too tight because you don't wanna mess up the shape of el pastel. Now the junta de pasteles, we call junta to pasteles tied together, is ready. If you want to cook it now, you can put it in a pot of boiling water, probably for around 30 minutes. And if it's frozen, you want to try 45 minutes to an hour. We boiled the pasteles for 30 minutes, and now the fun part, let's open them. I think my mom would be proud. Mira, mami, mira mi pastel. How did I do? Seeking still validation as a child. Now that the pasteles are done, I have a special guest, Gabriela Febres, who is the co-owner of Arepa Son and Mosaico here at La Cosecha, and she's originally from Venezuela. And Venezuelans and Puerto Ricans, we have a lot of things in common, like our music, our accents are kind of the same, and we also have each a version of pastel that's very similar. You guys call it hallaca. How do you make an hallaca?
So the hallaca, I was watching you make the pastel and I was looking at the similarities. We also use plantain leaves. We don't use the paper. We only use plantain leaves. Some families, to save, they use aluminum foil, and we use corn dough. So the dough that we use for arepas, it's the same dough we use for hallacas, same masa, with the difference that we add broth, and we add sometimes onoto. To give it some color to the dough.
So we call it achiote oil or annatto oil that we've been using throughout this recipe.
So after that, the way we make them, we make little balls with the masa, and we, usually it's a big production, right? We're not making there's no such thing as making like 10 hallacas. We make hundreds. So
for the sake of production here, we're making 14, but usually, yes, you'll make a lot.
You make a lot because it takes so much work. You might as well, gather the family, and everyone has a role. So someone will clean the leaves.
Yeah.
Like usually the little kids, their
Yeah.
role is to clean the leaves. And there's someone that cuts the, we call it like the vein out, the vein. So it doesn't, when you fold, it doesn't,
Yeah.
the leaves don't crack. Then you have the person that makes the dough. Guiso, typically that's like, you know, either
It's
the
an upper
grandma,
echelon,
that's an
yeah.
upper, yeah, that's upper in the ranks. So our guiso or the filling, we use three proteins: chicken, beef, and pork. Of course, there's people that make them with just chicken or just pork, but typically you'll find that we combine with 3 meats. And we also have the adornos, which are the ornaments. We put 2 olives or 3 olives. Some families put almonds in them or garbanzo beans.
Oh, wow.
There's people that are like, hallacas do not have garbanzos, but it depends on the region.
Yeah.
Some people even put hard-boiled eggs.
I've seen those before, yeah. Very yummy.
And then we have like usually a strip of red bell pepper. Some people add a strip of bacon. It really depends, you know, how you grew up, what your family does, and there's always a battle of, you know, who makes the best hallaca. But, you know, the mom usually takes the prize for that. So, and then we wrap it up and we tie it, and it's also boiled.
Well, now this is the fun part. You're gonna taste my pastel de yuca, and I'm gonna have the hallaca, and I've been staring at this forever, so. Ooh, I got a raisin. Yeah.
Oh, you got a raisin already?
Yeah. I love the sweetness of the corn too. Thank you, Gabby, again for joining us. You can check her out here at Mosaico and also at Arepazón. The hallacas were delicious, so now I'm gonna finish this thing.
Next time I'll bring some pan de jamón and ponche crema so you can get the full Venezuelan Christmas experience.
Thank you. And this is how we make pasteles de yuca at Casa Dining Traveler. A big thanks to my mom and my tias, my aunts, for passing on these culinary traditions to us. Making these pasteles brought back some great memories of growing up in Puerto Rico, in my town of Guayama, being with my family, making something that's such a big part of our culture. Thanks to La Cosecha for allowing me to use this stunning kitchen space. And I know that everybody has their way of making their pasteles, and I would love to hear how your family does them in the comments. And if you guys have any questions, please don't be afraid to reach out. And now the part I've been waiting for, and is to eat more pasteles. And I'm gonna put a little bit of tamarind hot sauce that they make in Puerto Rico. I got it from my friends at Gran Cata here at La Cosecha. Vamos. Ta-da-ta-ta. Qué rico. Bye.